Changers.
Welcome back to Gamechangers, powered by data.ai. Today, I'm excited to change it up and bring someone in from a different part of the mobile industry. This is Jason Heller, Chief Growth Officer of Mistplay. And Mistplay is the #1 loyalty platform for mobile gaming. Jason, welcome.
Thanks so much, Chris. Really pleased to be here.
Yeah, for sure. I like your background, and I understand you took that photo. Where are you? I mean, it's pretty obvious, but tell us where you are and just introduce us.
So I'm in New York. This is not a window, but it is a photo I took on a super cold night from top of the rock. I'm a born and raised New Yorker, so just absolutely love being in New York and traveling around the world as well. But I'm in New York, and our company's headquartered in Montreal, so I tend to go back and forth between the two.
Excellent. And let's just jump in. Let's hear. I want to hear first about your role at Mistplay, and then dive into the Mistplay business, and then we'll broaden out to your view of the industry and how Mistplay services that, and then kind of wrap up with some hot takes.
Absolutely.
So just a roadmap for our viewers. Terrific. So yeah, tell us about yourself. I know you have a very interesting background, and then what is your role, chief growth at Mistplay?
Yeah, so I've spent the last 20-something years at the intersection of data analytics and consumer-led growth. I started one of the first digital marketing agencies back in the mid-90s. Eventually sold that company to Horizon Media. Been trying to get out of the media industry for like 20 years, and I keep getting sucked back into more and more exciting, versions of the
always changing.
The media and ad tech business. And so I started in 2011. I started what today you'd call a digital transformation consultancy, which was acqui-hired into McKinsey. Led McKinsey's digital growth practice globally for 6-7 years. Left there, became the president of a pretty hot category now, which is generative AI, a company called Persado. Now it's all about ChatGPT, but I was doing that for a couple of years. Then I went back into consulting. I launched a consultancy called Transformation Ventures and started working with this amazing private equity firm called Growth Curve Capital that happened to be looking at their first acquisition, which was this amazing mobile loyalty platform called Mistplay. And so I started consulting with them for a few months, and then eventually they made me an offer I couldn't refuse. I came on as Chief Growth Officer of Mistplay, and I'm responsible for everything from the $80 million a year that we spend in user acquisition, the sales and commercial organization, some of the new product development, and just new avenues of growth for the company. And we're growing 100% a year, and it's been a pretty exciting adventure, and I don't see it slowing down anytime soon.
Wow. TLDR on that. You're the nice guy, the big brain that people want to throw in to drive leadership. That sounds like a sweet spot to be in.
Words said better than my mom, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, well, tell us about Mistplay, and I'm curious how you're driving that growth. I mean, that's wild.
It is. It's fairly unique, actually, both what we do and how and why we're growing. So first about Mistplay, just for those who don't know who we are, Mistplay is a community of millions of gamers focused on app discovery and loyalty for the mobile gaming industry. So users download our app, they discover games on our app, and then we reward those users for the amount of time, money, and achievements they make in those third-party apps. So all the top grossing apps. We have 300 and somewhat games on the platform. So all the players that you would imagine are running on Mistplay. So we reward users for the time and money they spend in apps, and then those users can redeem those points, we call them units, for gift cards. And we're going to expand the kinds of rewards that we offer to users, and it's just been an amazing journey. The founders of the company, I'm obviously not one of the founders, but the founders of the company had this great premise, built up a really successful first 6 years of the business. And then after the private equity firm came in and made a really large investment, we hired seven or eight C-level executives, including myself. And since then, we've added some structure and rigor to the business, put in some investment, and we're growing 100% a year, both in revenue and users and in headcount in the company. So, I mean, there's a lot of transformation happening, and it's been a wild ride. And like I said, it's not going to slow down anytime soon.
Yeah, full disclosure, when I was at Zynga running our solitaire product, we worked with a lot of companies like yourself. I never got to work with you. And a lot of those competitors started on web. I'm curious, is that where Mistplay started, or was this a straight to mobile?
No, it's straight to mobile. The genesis story is quite interesting, although I certainly don't tell it as well as the founders of the company. So Mistplay actually started as like a game testing platform, and then at some point they realized, the economics of that weren't really conducive to like a large enterprise, and so they shifted to this rewarded play to earn model. And we are the largest play to earn platform. We indirectly compete with any other UA source, right? So which, by the way, we also spend a ton of money on UA ourselves, but a company like Zynga or Moon Active or Playtika or whoever, they tend to have a media plan. On that media plan are like Google and Meta and Iron Source, and and then there's Tapjoy, and then there's companies like Mistplay. And so we're certainly not as large as the ad networks, but we represent something fairly unique, which is we have a community that's 100% gamers. A disproportionate portion of those gamers spend money in games and are what we'd call whales, what everybody calls whales. And so, that's really the focus of the business is how do we, make the connection between our community, the games that are looking not just for user acquisition, but frankly looking for valuable users that will continue to spend money and be valuable through the life cycle of that relationship with the publisher, which, as you know, is not easy, right? I mean, that's what everybody's searching for.
Mm-hmm. And just to really illustrate this for the listeners and viewers, what's the user experience? I mean, how do you drive these conversions in your app? Are they playing games in the app, or are they being pushed out to games?
No, they're being pushed out. So again, Mistplay is a bit of like a discovery platform. So users come to the app to discover new games to download, and then we reward gameplay. So we don't reward the install. So we're not an incentivized download platform. It's actually quite important because if you think about like incentivized media, a lot of it, most of it actually is, or maybe even all of it is incentivizing the download, not incentivizing the gameplay and the in-app.
Yeah, it's pretty bottom of the barrel in my experience.
Exactly. And so we go out of our way not to be that. And so users are discovering games, then they spend time and money in those games. We've developed live ops capabilities and other ways of identifying that Chris is playing Coin Master or Wudoku or whatever game you're into, and we can actually continue to target Chris with messaging to pull you back into that game, spend more time, more money in that game, and that's why our clients look at us as a unique part of their media mix, even though we might not be as large as Iron Source or Google.
So, just a pause. Are they having to put in a postback or something Okay.
Correct. So our clients are sending us back the postbacks. In a perfect world, we get that through like day 360, right? So unfortunately, in the gaming, I don't say unfortunately, the gaming industry, and I've spent a whopping year or so in the gaming industry now. The gaming industry generates ROI much slower than other categories. So for example, if you're an e-commerce company or a telco or a fintech company, the ROI is fairly immediate. Gaming companies take, usually almost a year to get back the ROI on the UA that they spend. And so, the longer the post-back period that our clients can send us data, the better partner we can be for them. And again, it's a unique part of being a community of users as opposed to an ad network where, once the UA has happened, there's really not a lot that Google or ironSource is doing. In fact, it's zero. They're not engaging that user for the life cycle of the relationship, which we can do.
I see. And so is that what's driving your growth? Is that value proposition and, they're really making that return on ad spend much more bankable?
Exactly. Yeah. So, our unique position is that we have the relationship with the gamers. We're not just an ad tech company. We're not just a media source. We are a community of gamers with the ability and frankly, the first party data, right? We have a rich set of first party data of exactly what every single one of these users is playing, how long they're playing. We have a pretty uncanny ability and we've invested a ton of money into, our AI models and our analytics to be able to predict the LTV of specific user segments, even down to the individual. And by the way, we're just scratching the surface there. That's probably the most exciting thing in our future is how we're investing in AI to be more predictive on the, life, not just lifetime value, but every specific event or behavior that a user can take, because the more predictively accurate we can be to predict user behavior, the better partners we could be to our clients.
Wow. I mean, you sound like the CEO of Data AI here. I mean, that's sort of the vision. We may have to have a call after the call.
Yeah,
that's incredible. And so, wow, you see a lot from that position. UA is becoming increasingly difficult, it's changing very quickly. What do you see as the current state of the industry there? Biggest challenges?
We're a large advertiser as well, right? I mean, we'll spend, not quite $100 million on UA this year, but I mean, a sizable amount. And so, we're spending money with, these partners. And I mean, like I mentioned earlier, like you can say we indirectly compete with them, but we're a thorn in their side. We're much smaller. I'd like to say one day we'll be the size of ironSource or Google, but I don't know if that's true or not. But the trends, I mean, there's a couple of painful parts of the industry, right? One, games just have a really high churn rate, right? Like it's, if you ask a non-gaming marketer, which is most of my background, what the average retention rate is on like day 30, day 180 for a user or a customer, the numbers are shocking, right? Like the amount of churn in gaming is so high. So advertisers or game developers have to keep going back to the well and spending so much money in UA because they're just churning through so many of those users. Now it's relatively sustainable. I mean, the model hasn't broken and hasn't hit saturation. But all the changes on the iOS side, which obfuscates the ability to track, has made that incredibly painful. That's not a new topic and has been, discussed ad nauseum in the industry, but that's been super painful. Just the cost of UA, the concentration of how much is spent with a relatively small number of partners at the top of that media mix versus the disparity, right? I mean, like, again, we're not quite yet the size to be at the top of the media mix. I like to think we're a stable part of the media mix, but certainly not of the scale of some of the partners I've mentioned. I think that there's another trend. I don't know if you want to call it a trend or at least a desire, but there's another trend that retention and loyalty is like the new UA, right? And that's I don't want to say it's a foreign concept to gaming, but it's certainly like the default motion of an e-commerce company, for example, or a travel company or a telco or a bank or, any other consumer industry. In gaming, it seems like, there's this drug of UA that we keep going back to and spending so much money, in part because that's just the way it is. The churn, the churn level it's high, right? I mean, average day 30 retention in gaming is like sub 10%, right? Like if you're, and I mean, like, we've done so much benchmarking on this. And by the way, we're super happy that we're like in the best in class range. Like we have a, I don't know if I want to share the actual number live on a podcast, but let's just say our day 30
round numbers on a word game.
Let's say somewhere between 10 and 15%, right? Which is which is way over the average, and
Mhm.
within the range of best in class. And if you pull that thread further, like, and you look at the games that are like really successful and have IP and product features that drives retention, it's actually not that short-term retention that makes the difference. If you look at Roblox, for example, Roblox day 30 retention is actually not that much different than any other mobile game. But when you pull the thread out to day 90, day 120, day 180, day 3, that's where they're retaining far more users
Yeah.
because of the sort of product market fit, and they get to enjoy the lapping effect of that kind of retention. And so um, if you're not looking for that, then you're focused on the wrong things, right? Like even a 20% improvement in midterm to long-term retention numbers has like a massive, massive financial impact to the business. And I think that's where everything is headed. I mean, this is just fortuitously we're positioned pretty well for that. But that's where everybody's headed because, again, I use this line a lot. UA is just a drug that you cannot get off of. Like you have to
Right.
continue to fund the lifeblood of the business, because ultimately you're churning through so many users, and if you don't do that, you literally don't have a user base anymore. And so um, how you invest in people, process, technology capabilities, including all the analytics and AI and live ops capabilities to engage a user over time and create more value and more LTV from specific user groups. That to me is the future of how to drive growth in online gaming.
Absolutely agree. And actually, this takes me back to your business and your product. Are y'all comped on some sort of LTV metric, or I'm sure it's not straight CPI?
So right now it's CPI ish. We we just rolled out a really interesting version of a TROAS product, right? A targeted ROAS product. And I'll go back to the sort of AI piece of our business. We made a conscious decision about a year ago. AI needs to be a competitive advantage of the business. We need to elevate it. It needs executive sponsorship. We need to develop AI products. We can't just do what everybody else is doing. And to that end, what we've done is we're actually really close to fully deprecating all manual bidding on the platform within, I don't know when this podcast will air, but probably 30 days or so from now, or 30 days ago, depending on when you're watching this.
Mhm.
What we've done is we've slowly shifted all of our client spending into a what I humbly feel is one of the most effective TROAS products, because we have a community and because we know what these individuals are doing. We can predict with really uncanny accuracy what the IAP spend would be for every one of our users in every one of our games in the next 7 days. And now we're going to pull that through and say, okay, how do we predict what Chris is going to spend in Coin Master or in
Wow.
Slotomania or Dice Streams or whatever on day 30, on day 60, on day 90, on day 180. And then we'll continue to use an evolving live ops capability and lifecycle marketing capability, with a bunch of next best action models underpinning all of this to say, how do we engage Chris on the games that he's been playing for the last 30 days, 60 days, 2 days, and how do we balance, the revenue that we're driving for Mistplay with the ROAS that we have to deliver to our clients with the user experience of the users in our community. And so we've got this like three-legged stool of like users, clients, and Mistplay. And what we've done, and I say this, with transparency, is we've sort of adopted this philosophy that if we focus on delivering the most value to clients, that everything else will fall in line. Like
Right.
our business growth will be there. It's a really difficult analytical problem to solve, right? Because like we're kind of like a two-way marketplace, right? And so we're solving for how do we optimize our own yield as a sort of ad tech media business.
Right.
How do we deliver the best experience to our users as a consumer platform? It's exciting. It's a really, really exciting problem to solve, actually.
Well, very refreshing to hear that the incentives are aligned
Yep.
between network and customer. And so it sounds like you basically have to make a lot of very difficult decisions around the impressions on your offer walls, your offers in your app, to figure out where to drive those players real time, based upon the targets and your predictions of where they're going to actually convert.
Yeah, it's funny. I have this like visceral reaction to that word offer walls, right? Just because they're,
Yeah, I know
they're
it's low end. I
because
know.
their
Well, give
networks
me a
are
better
offer
word
walls.
because I like a better word because I had some ideas, years ago about startup in the offer wall space, and
Yeah, yeah.
you say the word and people are like, "Oh, I'm not an affiliate," like
Yeah, yeah.
someone
Well,
in their
again,
basement,
because we're a single community, right? Like we don't actually distribute this, out to other third party games who are looking for ad based monetization. We actually call the core part of our app a mix list, right? So in
Okay.
the user's mix list, there's a bunch of games. Those games are sorted and prioritized based on our prediction of
Yeah,
what games the user is not just going to download, but actually spend money in, right? And because the reality is, what we could do, which is what ad networks do, is they predict what's the biggest yield for themselves, right? How do you
yeah,
maximize the unit economics of CPM, and then they hope that that's going to deliver good ROAS to the client, which frankly it does often. We look at it a little bit differently. We're looking at it as, how do we predict the IAP spend? How do we extract the whales, the spenders, to ensure that most of our clients that are free to play games that are ultimately like primarily monetized through IAP, that they're actually getting the value there. And I think again, it's like the tip of the iceberg. We've been what everything I've just described, we've only been at for like a year. So prior to 2022, it was all manual bidding. There was a little bit of like ML AI sprinkled in there, but now we have a chief data and AI officer. We've got a 30 to 40 person team. It's great. Literally, our teams just keep growing. I can't keep track, but let's say a 40 person data and analytics team with a really large data science community that's growing at the company, and we're going to continue to invest in those areas because that's how we strike the win-win, right, between Mistplay, our users, and most importantly, our clients.
absolutely. I mean, you're describing a dynamic user level hit list. I think you called it, and
Mixed list.
that's mixed list. That's going to drive the most conversion. That's amazing. That's a huge step forward versus anything I've seen in the past.
Yeah, and I'll throw this out there just because it's like such a weird dynamic in some ways. We're only on Android, right? So
Oh,
we're going to deliver, and I don't know if I'm comfortable sharing revenue numbers, but they're way bigger than what you'd expect. We're going to deliver hundreds of millions of dollars of value just on Android, and the reason is because the way our app is structured, Apple has a policy where they don't allow apps they feel look
sure.
like other app stores. And so
Yeah.
this has been an issue that we've been dealing with since the inception of the business. We are actually launching a progressive web app this year, actually within
Great.
the next couple months, depending on when you're watching this podcast. And maybe it's not the ideal experience that we would have wanted, because we would have loved a native iOS app. But there's also a lot of other benefits that we get because it's not a native iOS app, in terms of some of the tracking and all the pain
Oh yeah.
that others have been feeling. So we'll get there. We will within let's call it less than a year. I think we'll have some traction with iOS. Most of our clients have already committed to working with us in this progressive web app environment. And we're expanding geographically as well. So we're going into more countries than we've ever been into before. And it's amazing to sort of take this really data driven approach to like where should we spend the one constrained resource we have, which is time and capacity, for the biggest bang for our buck for Mistplay, and also the biggest return for our clients.
I've never heard the term progressive web app, so maybe you give us a TLDR there. I may not be the
Yeah,
only one out there. That sounds
yeah.
really exciting.
Yeah, it's just it's a web app. So you think about an iOS app, it downloads the icon onto your device, but
Right.
ultimately when you click that icon, it's you're not downloading it from the App Store. It is literally opening up a web browser app. So it feels and kind of behaves no different than a native app, with some exception, right? You can't use some of the native app features, and
So you don't have push notifications, right?
you don't have push notifications
Yeah.
because it's not an app, right? But
How
um,
much is that a driver of your retention? On the Android side, is that going to be a difference maker?
It's not going to be much of a difference maker because in the 7 years that Mistplay has been around, it's only been the last year that we've taken this incredibly sophisticated approach. I joke around. I think 95% of the live ops campaigns that Mistplay sent in the last 7 years have been in the last 7 months, right? And so, so we've grown accustomed to growing a business without some of those capabilities. Now it's a big driver of our growth, but we'll find plenty of other ways. So we might not have push notifications, but we will be able to email people. We'll be able to SMS people. We will be able to, communicate to them in real time while they have the app open. And so,
Yeah.
Our clients have been asking us for an iOS presence for years. So we're now able to do that. And, again, we'll find our ways into a product market fit, situation on the web app side. And by the way, we're not the only ones with a web app. There's so many, companies.
Oh, instant games are it now.
Yeah,
I'm very excited about instant games.
exactly. And so, that said, we really do want to be natively in the App Store, and so we continue to ideate, continue to sort of drive some innovation on the product side, and we'll get there.
Excellent. So we talked about kind of the current market for gaming, current environment. I mean, what are the biggest threats you see, opportunities and threats? Hit us with that, Mr. McKinsey.
Yeah. I think the biggest threat, we're starting to see a softening in IAP spend, which started, last year, and I think is continuing in different pockets. There's kind of this flywheel, right, of, IAP revenue going into these games, fueling UA spend, at a certain CPI level, within the UA ecosystem. I think there's a threat to the stability of that flywheel across the industry. There's also, just the general like macroeconomic, sort of shadow, at least for the next year or so. Which is part of what's driving that. Part of what's driving that's just a correction from like the massive growth during COVID, right? I don't look at any of that as existential, right? If you look at the data, and I'm pretty sure you guys have actually released some of this data. If you look at the data of like where the industry is going over the next few years, like it is still growing, and it is still a massive industry, and there's still massive opportunity. I think the softening of some of that IAP spend, what it's going to do is it's going to weed out some of the games that spend a ton of money on UA, kind of hope for the best, of these really long cycles of return on that ad spend, and hopefully it will fuel continued innovation in the games that really do have the product market fit, who really are providing both the users with the types of game loops and features that they want, and sort of continue to sort of fuel the industry around us. But I don't see anything really slowing down. I think we had this massive uptick during COVID, which benefited a number of different subsectors, not just in the gaming industry, and now because as businesses, we tend to look at comps of one year to the next. And so when you look at last year versus this year, when you had a massive uptick, it looks like, things are not, as rosy as they were before, but really you're comparing against a spike in baseline. If you look at the CAGR, the growth rate over multiple years, it's all still moving in the right direction. So, I really don't see massive threats to the industry. I see changes, and I see evolution, not revolution. And I think that's healthy.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we certainly pulled forward a lot of that revenue and a lot of those new gamers coming into it during lockdown.
Yep.
What can you say about genres? We've seen kind of the big games suffer the most, the billion plus club. What do you think? How do you think that'll play out? Are we going to see more, casual to mid-core, kind of in that very approachable area come up, hot in the future?
I think the casual to mid-core area, continues to be on fire. And there's this phrase, I don't know, maybe you've heard it before. I heard it for the first time the other day. Hybrid casual. So these hyper casual companies are now starting to slowly move upstream a little bit, because the business models that were predicated on sort of a almost a spray and pray kind of mentality, to go invest in a whole bunch of games, put them out there, fund it with a little bit of UA, see what sticks, continue to invest in the ones that work. And it was like finding a needle in a haystack, from what I understand from
Right.
a lot of these game publishers. And so, hearing that, which, by the way, whoever first coined hybrid casual, like, kudos, like, fantastic marketing. I do see that being a trend. And and likewise, if you look at the genres that are performing well, or even subgenres, in fact, we really enjoy the subgenre taxonomy that you guys, and if I'm allowed to say,
Oh,
Sensor
great.
Tower, also Sensor Tower, puts out there. I feel like you have to look at the subgenre level, because the blunt genres in the industry don't really give you a glimpse into what's actually driving the trends, and it's different around the world. So what's thriving in the US, it operates really differently in Asia, for example. And so in Asia, it's a lot of the RPG and strategy games, where in the US it's like the whole world of casual and all the subgenres that fit into there. uh we've built a tracker at Mistplay for our marketing teams and our commercial teams, that looks at the risers. So we look at, which subgenres and which games within those subgenres tend to rise like every 90-ish days. And while it's kind of stable, I mean, you do start to see these emerging patterns of
Hmm.
what's happening with the Merge 3 games and other popular categories. And again, if you take a look at that with a slice geographically, you see very different patterns geographically as well. And we're trying to become truly a global business. And that's been kind of exciting, because now we have to build the capabilities and the marketing programs and the live ops and lifecycle programs in different parts of the world, to create relevant experiences for gamers in
Right.
Korea, or in the UK, or in the US or Canada. And and soon we have plans of expanding way beyond some of those markets I just mentioned. But there's no universal trends, is a good statement to start with. And if you run a data driven business and you look at some of these subgenres and some of those trends, it's really interesting, and often is fairly actionable.
We're definitely seeing a lot of our customers with that same strategy, is let me figure out how to really go global and do it
Yep.
appropriately with the right features in the right genres. And back to your hybrid casual comment. Yeah, I just pulled up some data that I've referenced in the past, and we're just seeing year over year IAP revenue in hyper casual jump by about 30%.
Yep.
So, previously it was all ad based, and so kind of pulling those users, those players up market, into essentially casual, seems to make a lot of sense.
Yep.
And I'm sure that Misplay is helpful in that journey.
Yeah, it's interesting. We've never been able to get the hyper casual market to work well in Misplay.
Mhm.
I think because we've built a business around um, sort of an economic model that lent itself to more of the like casual mid-core kind of market, where they can afford higher CPIs. They put more time and investment into the game development and into product, right? Where the hyper casual games, they throw it out there. If it sticks, it sticks. And the small numbers of the hyper casual games that become popular, that have product market fit, they do, because it shares attributes of game loops that probably are similar to other categories that are
Yep.
maybe less hyper casual, if you will. And then they invest in them, and when they invest in them, they invest in a level of quality. And I feel like there was that like arbitrage kind of business where hyper casual companies are looking for these super low CPIs. They're just looking for volume, and again, they're fishing for product market fit. Like, fishing for product market fit works on an ad network. It doesn't work in a community gamers, where like we already have some boundaries around what our users want to engage with.
Right.
And we're not, again, we're just not of the scale where we can flow that much, frankly, low quality experimentation through our pipes and it have a benefit to us, our clients, or our users. And so, we've been trying over the years to figure out how do we better serve the hyper casual market, and we've never really figured it out.
Yeah, it would make sense that that player would need some level of features, maybe social, deeper progression to really come back to that game over the course of, I think we're talking about at least a year here for your product to really shine.
Yeah, and again, just the economics of hyper casual. And to your point, because hyper casual has historically been monetized through ads as opposed to through IAP, and because the economics are so low, right? I mean, a lot of these hyper casual games are acquiring users at like sub $1, right? And so, to your point, like to take a sub dollar UA, economics and kind of push that out to, whatever the return period is. Maybe it's not day 360, but you know it's still long enough where
Mm-hmm.
The economics, the communal economics, right? Because we are a community with only so many users. I mean, it's millions of users, but still it's not 100 million users. And so when we have to choose, like, where do we send live ops campaigns, which games do we continue to incent people to continue playing and spending money in, frankly, it's the games that have so much product market fit that they can afford the higher CPIs because their return is really there. And so, you mentioned incentivize or aligned interests earlier, and I think that is where our interests and the interests of the best performing games in the industry are really aligned. And so I think our best clients are games that are either already top performers, or, to be honest, we love the up and comers. We love like the fast movers that are growing, literally like climbing the data.ai and Sensor Tower charts in terms of top grossing games, because those are the clients that actually do really, really well with us because they've found product market fit. There's a lot of novelty to it. So it's, their IP is not like they haven't churned through 20-30 million users as some of the big games, that have been around for 4 or 5 years. They've churned through so many users. They still keep finding users. They grow these really healthy businesses, but the next chart toppers, if you will, those seem to be the ones that perform the best with us.
Got it. Just random question. What is the number one, or, kind of like the favored reward? Well, I'm assuming it's an Amazon gift card.
I think that's right. I think Amazon, I mean, we as you probably seen in our app, we have so many different gift card options. And by the way, they differ by country. So we make sure that's relevant to the users in that country. I think Amazon probably is the most popular. I think the PayPal gift cards are also quite popular. And by the way, the Google Play gift cards are quite popular. One area of focus that we're going to be moving into is expanding the kinds of rewards that we give to even go beyond gift cards, and even integrate like discounted in-app currency with some of the games that are working with us. So, we feel like there's a behavioral dynamic there. Our users really value being able to get rewards for something that they love doing, gaming. And so the more the more diversity we could give them and how to actually redeem those rewards for something or those points for something that's valuable to them, we think it'll create deeper retention, deeper connection to Mistplay as a platform. And we've done some experimentation that shows that that's a true statement. Just technologically takes a lot to create that level of flexibility and all the security and everything that we have to put into the platform. And so we're working on that. I think you'll see a really interesting rewards-based environment within the next year. And remind me before we end this to share with you something super exciting we're doing in terms of how we are going to distribute some of that via SDK into the industry.
All right, great. Yeah, well, we're going to move to the hot take session, and then I want to hear about your SDK. So you're a true New Yorker. You're not like, oh, I just moved and I live on, the Upper East Side,
born and raised and never lived in Manhattan. I think that's the definition.
Oh, wow. That is hardcore New York.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this should be the hottest of takes is what I'm getting at here. So yeah, I mean, tell me something controversial or, major hot take prediction for 2023 in gaming or the market in general. I think there's a lot of people we're all saying the same thing about IDFA, and, some people are saying, well, the gaming industry just needs to innovate more. I think that's pretty accurate. but there's definitely more to it. And I think from where you're sitting, I'd love to hear what you have to think.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you're going to think this is a sexy statement or not, but, I think the, investment in lifetime value and engagement of existing users and how to get more value out of existing users, which, it's just been on the back burner for a really long time. It's not that it's not being focused on, but, I think the IDFA issues and, how much more difficult it is to drive user acquisition and how painful that's been the last few years, particularly with these changes at Apple. I think people talk about it a lot. I don't really see a step change in difference in the way most game developers engage existing users. They just keep going back to that drug of user acquisition. And again, I mean, we're no different. But to me, that's, again, I think it's kind of sexy, but I don't know if that's like, it's certainly not a super innovative like game changer in terms of like a game loop or product feature, but I think that mentality, that mindset shift to focus on existing users and how do we actually engage these users more effectively and get more value out of those users, create deeper levels of retention. And I used Roblox as an example before, which might be an extreme example, but how can gaming companies actually buck this trend of churning through users and getting to the point where they're actually driving loyalty and actually driving more deeper retention? To me, that's either one of the biggest trends we're going to see, and if it's not, it's one that we should see, right? And when I talk to some of the bigger game publishers who I really respect, they are investing there, right? I mean, I'm not going to name names, but I've talked to a couple of companies where like they're investing teams of 100+ people into economy design and live ops and lifecycle marketing, and and then there's other companies that have one person or zero, and they're still just wholly reliant on just this leaky bucket of user acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's where we are. We're at the point where the pain of staying still, the pain of the de facto standard is greater than the alternative, and so you're going to start seeing the change because there's no choice. In the next 12 to 24 months, I think you're going to see a really big step change in the way that game publishers market to users. You can't wean yourself off UA, but you can become less dependent on it as a percentage of your total revenue
Mm-hmm.
than you are today.
Yeah, there's plenty of genres out there, in mobile especially, that have gotten good at this. Social casino being certainly the leader in that space,
Yep.
and really all of the retention plays there are based upon offers, incentivized offers of some sort. Come back for the sale, come back, for the event or to level up. And it seems like that's the core of your product as well. So it seems like a great spot to
Yeah.
be in.
And you just sparked another thought when you mentioned social
Yeah.
casino. Here's another sort of change coming. Increased regulation is going to become more painful, right? There's,
Mm.
between, the perception of, video gaming being addictive, and, we're based in Quebec, in Montreal, for example. There's, legal efforts in Canada. There's legal efforts around the world, to further regulate, the way gaming companies engage users. And so it's funny, some of the language that I'm even using and how we can predict user spend and time in game. We look at that as a win-win. You're giving consumers a great experience. You're giving, the game developers a great access to app discovery and IP. And then obviously we make some money in the process. But some would say that as gaming becomes more sophisticated and we become more predictively accurate on how to change behavior, that's a bad thing. I think we have to all be responsible in how we do that. I think we should all be conscious and aware and have great legal teams to keep us out of trouble as we navigate. It's increasingly a regulated market, and around the world, even just gaming outside of data privacy, like gaming itself is being regulated more and more. And so I think if you look at those two things, like the ability to engage users and create great experiences and extract value out of those great experiences, and managing the sort of mitigation of risk in regulation around the world, I think you put those two things together and you get an interesting picture of what the next couple of years might look like.
When you reference regulation, is that a potential for North America? Do you see us kind of going the route of China even? with
I don't
time
see any.
limits and all?
I don't see anything imminent in North America. That said, if you look at the broader digital marketing ecosystem, right? There's a lot of prediction of the fragmented data privacy laws in the U.S. turning into a single national regulation, which, by the way, would actually be a great thing, even if it's a little bit
Hmm.
more regulated than it is
I mean,
today.
cheaper for studios for sure.
Exactly, and then you look at the sort of industry based regulation, like what IDFA, that sort of self imposed regulation. Google is doing away with cookies more broadly in the entire advertising ecosystem, and that's going to have downstream effects in Google's privacy sandbox and the obfuscation of tracking and all of these things. And so, there's regulation, which is government regulation, and then there's policy changes, to frankly mitigate their own risk in the grand context of preventing further regulation of the industry. And again, when you look at those trends, they're very real. And we should all be scenario planning, and we should all be responsible, because I think that a lot of the reasoning behind all of this regulation and policy change is bad actors take advantage, and we all suffer because there's a lot of irresponsible marketers out there, and that's as true in e-commerce or any other performance-based marketing, as it is in gaming. But again, I think there's an additional layer of regulation in gaming, particularly in different parts of the world, just because of the perception of the video game addiction, and just the sometimes the potential for games to be more attractive to minors, where you might not have that, for example, with an e-commerce company. So it's very real. I don't hear enough discussion. I hear complaints about the downstream effects of when big tech companies put new policies in place that obfuscate tracking. What I don't hear is enough conversation on how can you run a profitable business and still be responsible in the way that you leverage user data and and respect privacy.
Well, thanks for that. I'd like to wrap up and just hear a little more about Mistplay and your SDK coming out.
I would love to. So we've been in this loyalty space for 7 years now. We're bringing a product to market where we're actually about to enter a beta period with a handful of pilot publishers. Basically, what we're doing is taking the entire loyalty mechanic. We're calling it, or at least internally, we call it loyalty as a service. And we're creating a white label loyalty platform. It's a light SDK that any publisher can install on their app. And what it does is it enables the users in their app to then have a loyalty platform for that game or across a single portfolio within a publisher. And so the publisher will be able to sort of create their mini economy and define, how many points do you award for refer a friend, for a level achievement, for a dollar amount spent in IAP, for time spent in the game. So we have all those events built into the SDK. And then non-intrusively, this thing sits, within the app, and there's, you could customize as a publisher, you customize where this thing sits within the app. Users accrue points, and then it has a turnkey, what we call a loyalty shop. So it is a turnkey shop that those users can then take those points and go redeem them for gift cards, and the whole thing is turnkey. And the business model behind it is inside our SDK, we're effectively tracking the difference in lifetime value of users who engage in the loyalty platform and those that don't. And it's like zero risk for the publishers. We basically do a revenue share on the delta of LTV created as a result of having a loyalty program in your app. So we're super, super excited about it. It's like one of the, I think it's a game changer personally. I think it's to your point earlier, it's a level of innovation I think you don't see in this industry. And we're doing it in a way it's not intrusive. It doesn't sacrifice any other ad monetization or IAP monetization. Is literally, in my opinion, it's like the first thing that's come around in a really long time that's truly additive to all the other ways that games monetize. And it goes back to, our theory that one of the trends that companies are moving towards is how do you create more value from existing users. And so we think we've come up with a way. I'm not going to say it's the way, because there's plenty of things games need to do, but we can theoretically, I say theoretically because, it's probably a spectrum, but you could theoretically increase the LTV of the games that use this SDK by about 10%, which, for a game that's generating, $100 million, which is a small side, but $100 million in IAP, that's $10 million of revenue, right? So, it's all relative, right? If you're doing $1 billion in IAP, it's $100 million. And so, we think it's a new opportunity that we're getting really incredibly warm reception to. And so anybody who's watching the podcast, please reach out to us if that interests you. And again, it's all totally turnkey. So we're really, really excited about this one.
That is exciting. I could see how maybe some of it inspired by, the play to earn model on the crypto side, but far more customer friendly and no speculation there. So
correct. Yep.
That is very exciting.
Yeah. And by the way, mentioning the crypto side, I mean, Web3 gaming isn't really gaming in my mind, right? Web3 gaming, the whole model is people are flipping NFTs, and they're, it's not the game mechanics that people are engaged in. It's the speculation that, they can acquire an NFT, that NFT increases in value. And so it's, it's not the same audience, right? It's a totally different audience that engages in the Web3 play to earn than what I guess you want to call the Web2 play to earn, which is what we do. It's on our horizon. Like we will eventually get into Web3 play to earn. I don't think the time is now, but we will. And when the time is right, and the value prop to users and the gaming community at large feels right, Mistplay will be there to properly introduce, Web3 play to earn, which will have the right dynamics and not a speculative, investment thesis behind NFTs the way that it is today.
Awesome. Well, Jason, I appreciate your time. I'm so glad to hear that you're enjoying the data AI product and Game IQ.
Thank you. And congrats for such an amazing podcast. I've really been enjoying it, and it's been an honor to be on.
Great. Well, have a great day. I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Chris.
Bye-bye.